Welcome to Gospel Truth with Andrew Wommack, celebrating 50 years of sharing God's unconditional love and grace. And now, Andrew continues teaching from the life-changing Word of God about how to find, follow, and fulfill God's will.
Welcome to our Wednesday's broadcast of the Gospel Truth. Today I'm going to continue a series talking about how to find, follow, and fulfill God's will. I just started this on Monday of this week, so I've just really gotten into a little bit of it, but I've got a lot of materials on this. Matter of fact, this entire teaching that I'm doing used to be 3 separate teachings, and each teaching had 5 teachings in each one of these sets. So now I've got 3 sets, one set on how to find God's will, follow, how to fulfill, 5 teaching in each one of these, and then we combined all of this into one book entitled How to Find, Follow, and Fulfill God's Will. We have it in Spanish, and then we have these study guides, and the study guides are the exact same material that's in the book, but it's broken out in a way that you can teach other people. You read these statements, you ask questions, you discuss it. I call it discipleship for dummies. And this not only helps you to get hold of it, but it helps you to teach other people. And I promise you, this is something that the average Christian just does not know. The average Christian believes that God has a purpose for their life, but they don't know how to get there. I was there, and when I was a senior in high school, I started pursuing, God, what is your will for my life? And I went to the leaders of my church, the pastor, and all these other people. Nobody could tell me. It was just basically, well, you just trust God and it'll automatically work out. It doesn't automatically work out. You know, when I first started in ministry, most people wouldn't let me preach. They wouldn't come to hear me preach. They wouldn't let me preach in their church. And so when I was pastoring in Childress, Texas, one of the few places I could go was the prisons, the jails, and the nursing homes. And it was really good for me, especially the nursing homes, because I saw people who had been very successful in their life, but now they were older and they were kind of, in a sense, put out to pasture, just waiting to die. And I saw people that just their whole life had been, maybe it wasn't bad. They had families, they had children, but in their old age they had been basically forsaken, forgotten. Most of those people didn't have anybody come visit them, and they were just in torment wondering about, what's my life been about? I know that this is uncomfortable to talk about. Most people don't want to listen to this. Somebody would like to turn the station right now. But you know what? If you don't deal with this now when you have your health and you can make some changes, I can guarantee you when you get old, you're going to look back and say, what was my life all about? Is it just getting up, going to work, making a living, coming home, watching television, maybe having a vacation once a year and stuff? Is that all it's about? Is it about you just taking care of yourself? You know, get all you can all you get, and then sit on your can? Is that what life is about? God made you for a reason. And until you find out what that purpose is and pursue it, it is not going to come to pass automatically. You know, we just had a series of programs on our television about my 50th year since this encounter I had with the Lord, March the 23rd, 1968. And most of that, we all reference that date because that's when God showed up. That's when my life made an about face. That's when every good thing that God has ever done in my life or ministry began. But in actuality, it began before that. Because for a year or 18 months, I had been saying, God, what is your will for my life? And this encounter I had with the Lord, there was a reason I had that encounter. I don't always take the time to explain all of this. But you know, you just talk about how God showed up and things happen. Like for instance, in the 9th chapter of the book of Acts, I won't take time to turn over there, but you find that Saul was on the road to Damascus. He was going there to persecute Christians, and it looked like that he was just totally against Christianity, against all of these things. He was going to go there and arrest people and persecute them and kill Christians. But when the Lord showed up, He says, Saul, Saul, it's hard for you to kick against the pricks. Some translations say against the goads. And people, you know, because we don't speak that way today, people just think, well, what does that mean? And they pass over it. But if you go back into Acts chapter 7, where Stephen was stoned to death, it says that the people that heard him speak were pricked in their hearts, and they rose up and persecuted him and stoned Stephen to death, the very first martyr recorded in Scripture for the Christian faith. And it says that they laid down their coats at the feet of a man named Saul. That's the Saul who had this encounter with the Lord. And when the Lord said, Saul, Saul, it's hard for you to kick against the pricks. You know what that means? God had been pricking him, convicting him. He had been under conviction since he saw Stephen have so much grace that he even turned around and said, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. The same thing that Jesus said when he was on the cross about, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And Saul had been pricked in his heart. He had been under conviction. In other words, this Damascus Road experience where he encountered God and had this miraculous encounter, it didn't just happen out of the blue. God had been convicting him. And we don't know all of the things that had been going on. Apparently, Saul hadn't completely given in to the conviction of the Lord, or he wouldn't have been headed to Damascus to persecute the Christians. But he had been under conviction. God had been dealing with him. And what I'm trying to say is that before you have these miraculous encounters with the Lord, the soil has to be prepared before you can plant the seed and see it produce. In my own case, before I had this experience with the Lord, March the 23rd, 1968, for 12 months or 18 months, I had been seeking the Lord about, God, what's your will for my life? What do you want me to do? And that was the thing that turned my heart towards the Lord and got me to seeking God. And that's the reason I had this miraculous encounter where God showed up. And I mean, over 50 years ago, my life was totally changed. But it all started with, God, what's your will for my life? What's your plans? I know that you got a purpose for me. And I'm telling you, I believe that this is a starting place for everybody. You will not accidentally fulfill the will of the Lord. And I know that there's people that will disagree with what I'm saying, but I have proven this in my life. I can tell you that if Jamie and I, even after God told us what His will was and that He wanted me to be a minister of the gospel and that He wanted me to reach other people and then go on television, radio, and all of these things, even though we've been heading in this direction, there has been a lot of opposition. And if I would have just taken the easy road out, we would have quit 100 times. You would have never been listening to me, watching me on television right now. I can just guarantee you that it took a lot of effort. It's not my effort that caused these things. God had a purpose for me, but there was a lot of resistance from people and stuff. And if I would have taken the easy road out and have quit, I'd have never have seen God's will come to pass in my life. So I'm saying from personal experience that, man, if you just take the easiest route, if you're like water that just seeks the lowest level, you know, whatever is the easiest, you're going to go to the lowest level. You're going to take the easiest route, whatever is the easiest on you. If that's the way that you live your life, I can guarantee you that you will not experience God's best. Not because God doesn't love you, but He doesn't force you into anything. It takes effort. And I could turn to every single person. Man, you could start with Abraham, the things that he went through before he saw God's will come to pass. It took time. It took effort. You can go to Moses. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness and then just resistance in every way. David had all of this opposition that he went through. And you can talk about Joseph, and you can just go through every person in the Bible, and I can guarantee you God's will does not sovereignly, automatically come to pass in anybody's life. You have to pursue the things of God in order to get it. So I say all of this to say that when I had my miraculous encounter, March the 23rd, 1968, I had been seeking to know what God's will was. And in Christmas of 1967, my youth group at church went to Cloudcroft, New Mexico, and we would go skiing and snowboarding and tubing during the day. And then at night, we would get together and have a devotion. And during one of the devotions, a man read Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Now remember that for 18 months, I'd been saying, God, what's your will for my life? I know you've got a purpose. What is your purpose? I want to fulfill your will. And this man read Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, and that says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Now, I was in this youth group. I was hearing this man read this, and when he got to the last part of that second verse where it says, you will prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God, it's like all of a sudden God just struck a chord in my heart and said, this is what you're wanting, the perfect will of God. And I saw that this right here says, here's how you prove. And this man went on to explain that the word prove, according to the dictionary, means to make manifest to the physical senses. Now see, this fit perfectly with what I felt in my heart. I felt God had a purpose for my life. I've shared these other scriptures from Psalms 139, Jeremiah chapter 1, Galatians chapter 1, where before people were even formed in the womb, God had written out what His will for their life was. I believed God had a purpose. I had been seeking it, but I just didn't have it manifest. I couldn't see it. I couldn't understand it, but I believed it was there. And this says that you prove, the word prove means to make manifest to your physical senses. That's what I wanted. And when I saw this, it's just like, man, God put a spotlight on this, and I said, this is it. This is the key right here. Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. This is how you find the good, the acceptable, and the perfect will of God. Now, there's a lot in these verses. I've been meditating on these verses for over 50 years, and I'm still getting revelation. I can't tell you everything that God has spoken to me through this, but I want to use this kind of as the foundation of here's how you find God's will for your life. It says that you will prove. That means make manifest to your physical senses the good, the acceptable, and the perfect will of God. Now, as we get further into this series, I'll amplify on this and explain this in greater detail. But notice, you don't just find the perfect will of God. You find the good, the acceptable, and the perfect will of God. Some people say that this is just describing one thing, that God's will is good, acceptable, and perfect. But I also believe that it describes that there's steps and stages into walking into God's will. This fits perfectly with Mark chapter 4, where it gives this parable about the man who just casts seed into the ground. He sleeps and rises night and day. He doesn't know how it works, but it just works, and it brings forth first the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the ear. 3 steps, and this says that you find the good, the acceptable, and the perfect will of God. I believe that this is a principle that's all throughout the Word of God, that you just don't go from where you are into the perfect will of God in one step. It's stages, it's steps, and it's stages to it. Now, like I said, I'll amplify on this more as we go through this series, but it's important that you recognize that you just can't go from having never known exactly what God's will for your life is into the total fulfillment just instantly, because it takes a lot of growth on your part to be able to do that. Did you know right now, I have to have around $5 million a month just to pay my bills and to do the things that I've got to do. And it is growing. It's not going to be long until we'll need $10 million per month. And then above that, I don't see any end in sight. But my point is that if God would have shown this to me back in 1968 when He touched me and He says, I'm going to give you a ministry that will be on television, radio, doing all of these things, and you are going to need $5 million a month to accomplish what I've called you to do. If He would have shown me all of that, it would have overwhelmed me. It was just way beyond me as an 18-year-old to even conceive of that, to even think of it. God doesn't show you everything. Now, He showed me immediately. I had dreams that I was going to be taking the truths that God had set me free with, and I was going to be sharing this with people all around the world. Immediately, I believed that, and I started moving in that direction. But I had no idea that it would be radio and television, that I'd be traveling the world, that I'd be doing the things that I'm doing. I had no idea I'd have a Bible college and that we would be discipling thousands, tens of thousands of people. I didn't see any of the details, but I believed it was going to be big. But I mean, if God would have shown me All of the things that I now know and that I'm walking in right now, if He would have shown that to me 50 years ago, it would have so overwhelmed me. It would have scared me that I would have thought, God, you got the wrong person. I possibly would have rebuked it, would have headed in the other direction saying, no way, this could not happen. You have to grow into it. Or another possibility is I would have become so impatient that I would have wanted to see this come to pass that I wouldn't have been able to just take every little step and first of all start teaching in a little Baptist church and doing a tiny group of about 5 people, and then I started Bible studies, and then we pastored 3 little churches and on, and I wouldn't have ever been able to have been faithful and have worked at that level if I would have seen all of the things coming to pass. It would have made me so impatient I couldn't have stood it. I have students come to me all the time, and they say, I've been in school for 6 months and I still don't know what God's will for my life is. And I said, well, it's a 2-year school. Actually, it's a 3-year school with our 3rd-year options. And I said, God knew this, and if God was to show you everything He's going to do with your life, it would either overwhelm you because you haven't grown to a place where you could accommodate it, or it would make you so impatient you wouldn't finish out the school. I said, you haven't graduated yet. Wait, give God time. He's called you here. Be faithful where you are, and when it's time, God will reveal things to you. So there is the good, the acceptable, and the perfect will of God. You just don't get there all at once. You don't go from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour all at once. If you do, that is not acceleration, that's a wreck. It'll kill you. Amen. To go from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour all at once, it'll kill you. You have to start out and maybe take a step and then begin to start jogging and then run and then get in the car and you accelerate, and it takes time to build up that momentum. It's the same thing in the Christian life. So as we start talking about how to find, follow, and fulfill God's will, you got to recognize that He's going to give you just a little glimpse. He's going to show you just a step where you are, how to move in that direction. He won't show you everything all at once. He may give you some vague picture that you're going to be doing something, like with me, that I would be touching people all over the world. This was my dream, and it's something that God put in my heart. But I had no details, no understanding of how it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, any of these kind of things. He won't show you the end, and there's multiple reasons, but one of them is because He loves you so much. If He was to show you everything, give you step 1 through 100 and give you just a clear direction of everything that you needed to do, then if you failed to do it, you would be guilty of violating 100 things that God showed you. He'll just show you 1 step at a time because He loves you. And if you don't fulfill it, if you don't follow through, instead of being guilty of the other 99 things, you just are accountable for that 1 thing He showed you. But because of this, see, there's a lot of people that just don't want to take the risk. They are sitting here playing it safe and saying, God, if I do what you're telling me to do right now, what's the end result going to be? What's going to happen? God's not going to show you all of the end results. You just have to be faithful to take this step. I don't want to take the time to turn over here. I've got an entire teaching entitled Lessons from Elijah, and the first teaching in that series is called A Place Called There. And over in 1 Kings chapter 17, Elijah got a word from God to go tell the king that it's not going to have rain or dew until I say so. He had a word from God. And this king, Ahab, had been killing all of the prophets of God. By Elijah going and speaking to the king, he was putting his life on the line. He could have been killed. He didn't know what the end result was going to be. Now see, there's a lot of people that if you got a word from the Lord and you were going to go tell somebody that possibly could kill you for delivering that, there's people that would say, well, God, I'm not going to do this unless you show me what's going to happen. Are you going to protect me? How you're going to take care of me? But no, Elijah just acted on the word that he had and went and spoke to King Ahab. And then after he had fulfilled that first word, then the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, now go to the brook Cherith, and I'm going to hide you there, and I'm going to have ravens bring you bread and flesh in the morning and stuff. And he gave him a word about his protection and how things would work out. But he didn't give him that second word until he had acted on the first word. And there's a lot of people that God has shown you to do something, but you're saying, oh God, if I do this, what's going to happen? And you're waiting until God gives you all of the details, and there's no faith involved whatsoever. And then if God can explain to you, that 50 years in advance, everything's going to be fine, then you'll do what He's told you to do. That's not how the kingdom of God works. It's first the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the ear. It's the good, the acceptable, and the perfect will of God. God will just lead you one step at a time. It's terrible for people to go through life and have no clue about what God's will for their life is. But what's even worse is to have God give you direction, and yet you aren't doing anything because you aren't sure how it's going to work out. You don't feel like you could trust God. Until He explains to you, you just aren't going to move. I see this with our Bible college. People come up and say, I know God told me to come to Bible college, but, and then they'll tell me about some problem, finances, people that, family that don't want them to come, or job situation, or health, or on and on they go with all of these things. And then they'll explain, say, what should I do? And I said, you lost me the moment you said God told you to come to Bible college. If He told you to come to Bible college, you just do it. And they say, but what about my job? What about? And I said, look, if God tells you to do it, He will make provision for it. Matter of fact, if you go on in 1 Kings chapter 17, after God told Elijah to go to the brook Chelah, He says, I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. He did not send the ravens or the provision to where he was. He sent the provision to where He told him to go. Man, that is huge what I just said. And see, again, back to this illustration of people saying, God told me to come to Bible college, but then they wonder, how about my job? I've got a good job here. I don't have a job out there. The cost of living is cheaper here than it is out there. And my family, and they start talking about this, and they want God to send the provision to where they are. You give me a job, you guarantee that I'll have a place to live, a job that everything's going to work out, and then I'll do what you told me to do. That's not the way it happened with Elijah. He delivered the word, and then God told him to go there. I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. God does not send your provision to where you are. He sends your provision to where He told you to go. There is a place called there for every one of us, and the big problem is that most of us aren't all there. We are too much here. We're waiting on God to work everything out. No problems, no risk, no faith. God, you just work everything out. Give me step number 10, step number 100. No, He's going to give you one step at a time. First the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the ear, the good, the acceptable, and the perfect will of God. And He'll just lead you into it one step at a time for multiple reasons, but one of them is because He loves you so much. He doesn't want to see you crash and burn. He doesn't want to overwhelm you. He doesn't want to make you so impatient that you want to abide and let the growth process happen.
You're invited to attend the 2018 Charis Business Summit in Woodland Park, Colorado. 3 days to hear successful business leaders share their amazing stories of achievement using God's biblical principles. 3 days to step back from your business, to learn new skills to achieve your business goals through kingdom principles. You can learn more about the 2018 Charis Business Summit by visiting our website. Why not seize your vision?
Discover how to live out and accomplish God's will for your life when you get Andrew's teaching titled, How to Find, Follow, and Fulfill God's Will. It's available in a book in English or Spanish for a gift of any amount. This series is also available as 3 individual teachings: how to find God's will, how to follow God's will, and how to fulfill God's will. They're each available in a CD or DVD album recorded live at a Gospel Truth seminar, or they're each available as individual companion study guides. Each of these resources is available for a gift of any amount.
I'd like to encourage you to get this product that I have on how to find, follow, and fulfill God's will. This book is actually a combination of 3 separate teachings. I've got a teaching, 5 parts on how to find God's will, 5 parts on how to follow God's will, 5 parts on how to fulfill God's will, and all 3 of these are combined into this one book. So we have the teaching on either CD or DVD. We've got the book. I've also got a book in Spanish, and then we have 3 study guides that will go through each one of these parts. And a bonus offer is our Destiny Stories DVD about people who have found God's will and are living it out in their life. It will be a blessing to you.
You can get all 3 of these products in the God's Will package. This package includes the book, all 3 study guides, and your choice of either all 3 CD albums or all 3 DVD albums. Order the God's Will package today, and you'll also receive the most recent Destiny Stories DVD, Destiny Stories Volume 2. This entire package has a catalog value of $195, but you can get it today for just $135. You can order resources or become a Grace Partner through our website at awmi.net. While there, you can discover more product details and download many free resources. Our helpline is closed today, but you can always visit our website where you can order ministry materials online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at awmi.net. On our website, you'll not only find materials from today's broadcast, you'll find a wealth of ministry resources available to you. If you prefer, you can order materials by writing us. Use the address on your screen.
We shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Listen carefully to my words, for they bring life to those who find them. Learn how you can experience the Word operating in your life with online courses from Charis Bible College.
Hello, this is Andrew Wommack, and I just would like to encourage you to help us get the gospel out through social media.
By joining us on Facebook, you will receive exclusive content, like Andrew's weekly Tuesday Night Live Bible study, teachings, live streams, and Q&A sessions with Andrew.
And we've sent out over 42,000 ministry responses to people who have contacted us through social media. And we would just like to see this increase. So we would like to see you like our Facebook page, to share it with other people, and you be a minister of the gospel by sharing this with someone else. I'd like to encourage you to check out our inside story on our website. This is where we interview people behind the scenes. Go check it out at awmi.net and then check on the inside story. It'll be a blessing to you.